and I've been talking about my experiences in the New Age, which spanned for about 27 years, or probably could have been more. The thing is, I found out that I was doing many things because I was very curious about the spiritual realms, and I knew that there was a spiritual realm, and once I found that out, I was out to investigate because I felt as if there was more to life than met the eye. And these are like chronicles of my journey of how I became interested in the supernatural and my journey into the rabbit hole, as the New Agers call it, because the further you go down, the more things there are to discover. But I'd like to say at this point that I'm saying this in a way of my experiences, neither good nor bad right now. And because the things that I got involved with very fascinating, and one thing led to another. So I'd just like to let people know that what I'm going to discuss today is my experiences with channeling. It's something I never knew existed until in my previous videos, I think it's my spirit guide videos, I talk about being in the spirit circle, where we had a medium and he would channel different spirit guides, which I found very fascinating, and each one had its own unique individual character. And so I was quite interested and intrigued to do this myself. So I used to meditate at home, and by meditation there's two styles of meditation which I have now found out. There's the meditation of the New Age, which is opening your mind. It's like stilling the mind and opening it up, allowing something to come in or to come out. And I found out that was not the right way to do things, but that's further down the line. That's like 27 years later, and I'll tell you for why at the end. Or there's the biblical meditation, which is reading a piece of scripture and then you meditate on it by actively thinking upon it, pondering it, mulling it over. So you don't open your mind to something, you're actually active with your mind. But the New Age is very much like keep your mind passive and open, and the more that you keep it open, the better spirit communication is, and I know why now. But my channeling experience was I was allowing somebody, a spirit, to come and put themselves over my mind so that they could use my voice box. And I went through some exercises really, and I was very aware that somebody that I couldn't see was very active in my throat area, and I would say that I was doing things that were very odd, like having my mouth open, allowing them to do something inside of me which I thought was spiritual. Now I know it wasn't, so if you're going through that, please stay to the end of the video clip to so that you know how I managed to get back to being me again, because this was something that shouldn't be done to anybody. Nobody's meant to interfere with you, whether it's a spirit or not, with anything that you've got with your mind or your throat. But that's what I allowed to happen. I was listening to spirit voices and they were guiding me what to do, and I thought it was for the good of God, but that's my naivety at the time. But I think that's a lot of New Agers are looking for God. And as I say, my intentions were pure, to try and find some truth and to let people know there was a life after death, and we don't just die like some people do, and there's a lot of fear around that. And what the movement I was involved with was not to fear. We do die, but we move on to different spirit dimensions. That's how the New Agers saw it. We wanted to explore it and then pass the message on to others. That was the whole intention. So eventually I then became more intuitive to spirit, because I could sense them around me and I was listening intently on what instructions they were giving me. And then eventually I had my first communication out of the blue, I started to say, I am, I am, I am. And I was just sitting there, and all of a sudden this voice came and said, I am, I am, I am, out of me. And I know it wasn't me. And then it was almost as if all the work that they'd been doing with me, with my throat, actually started to work. Because then I could actually hear them and see them with my third eye. It's like my mind's eye, the different spirit guides, and I could see them all quite clearly. And some of them there was children there, and different nations like Red Indians, or they're just very pleasant looking people. So I wasn't at all scared, and so I allowed them to talk through me. And it's going back such a long time ago now. I'm trying to recall how it all started. But I think with the I am, it was the first step towards them manipulating my voice box. So I used to go into meditation. I used to just sit very quietly and not think of anything. By this time I could empty my mind quite easily. Thoughts had gone by now because I was very adept at meditation, letting things out. And then I could hear somebody talking to me as if they said, oh, we're going to start the next level, and the next level was going to be channeling. So I sat there very still, and my heart would race. I could feel it was like really intensive, like the heart would beat, like something really important was happening. And then the next thing, my body was being manipulated. My hands would go up and down on my lap. I would, what else would happen? I felt as if I was somebody else, put it that way, and it was they were manipulating my hands. I felt as if I was channeling a female, I was female. If I was channeling a male, I felt male. I could tell whether they're fat, thin, or in between. I just sense their presence, and I sense whether they were a teacher, whether they... So I just, their essence, I could sense their essence. And they started to use my voice box. So I used to say very still. And it's if like they push you back, like the person, the spirit inside your body, but they push you back and they come in front of you. So they sort of come over you, but then they manipulate your voice box and you can sense their personality. One example, for example, of me channeling, after a few years I had a lodger come and visit me. He used to stay with me, and he was quite theatrical and he was an actor, and all of a sudden when I was talking to him I felt as if I was very affected, and I wanted to put my hair back into some sort of band, and I felt very arty and theatrical, and I was prancing around the kitchen talking in this affected way, and this being said it was this man's spirit guide who told him a few things about his life, some of the mistakes he was making. So the spirits always make you feel as if they're looking after you, and that's why it always feels quite nurturing. They'll tell you what things in your life you're struggling with and how to get out of it. I think that's one of the things I found quite comforting, is the fact I was getting help. I was never frightened because they seemed as if they were after my well-being. And then the spirit guide would prance around using my body and my voice box to speak to this person that was visiting me at the time. And it's a surprise to me, it was a surprise to my friend, but he did know what I was up to, that I was involved with spiritual matters. So that was one example of a spontaneous takeover. I'm going to start calling it a takeover. And then another time would be in a setting where we would, these would be people that were involved with channeling or had channelled. We would get into a position where we would encourage these beings to come and perhaps give us a night of spirit messages. So I would go into trance which means I just switch off and allow somebody to come over me, and I can sense them coming closer. And it's a bit like an overlay. They overlay their spirit over your spirit so that they control your voice box and your hands and your body. And it's always done through permission, they say. And so we always pray, ask for protection, and then I would get into position and I would just allow whoever it was, and they would start speaking. It was usually philosophy or some sort of spiritual wisdom, and it was all very interesting at the time. And sometimes people would have personal messages. They were always very interesting because you didn't know who you're going to have. It could be a Chinese Mandarin who had ancient wisdom. It could be a Red Indian guide. There was one that had a great sense of humour, and his job was to look after the group, he said. So while we weren't aware of it, he was always looking out for us. So you always felt guided and protected. And I feel that's why I went for it, because I just sensed I felt guided and protected. And we all come from God, and they're a little bit closer to God than us because they're not in a body, so they're probably coming in and out of the spirit realms. And that's what I now know as is the great deception, because when I encountered Jesus in my kitchen, now I must tell you about this because I used to listen to a few channelers that channel Jesus, because I was always interested in Jesus and I had my heart for Jesus when I used to go to church in a Catholic church, and I was just always, my heart went out to Jesus, and anything about Jesus I loved to hear about. And even to my spirit guides I used to say, did I know Jesus in my past life? And one of them I said indirectly. I don't know what that would mean, but maybe I was one of the crowd and I was really excited to know that. But there are channelers that do channel Jesus. But the thing is, the channels that channel Jesus are different to the Jesus of the Bible. But by this time, I was so open to listening to anything that I was very interested in what they had to say. For example, one of the things that I learned about Jesus in the spiritual realms with the New Ages is that he used to go to different countries like India to travel to learn how to meditate. So he was into meditation, and he'd learned about how to ascend, and that's what we were trying to learn how to do, to ascend out of our physical drossness into the higher spiritual realms where we were vibrating on a high level. Means that we were kinder to people, and that we were getting more closer to the heavenlies, so to speak, the spiritual realms, rather than the dross of the earth, the clanging earth, and all the things that people got up to in the ordinary world. So the spirit guides used to lead me to listen to different channelers of Jesus. There was one particular one who was saying that all the spirit guides were saying that Jesus married Mary Magdalene. That was one of the things that was very well known in the New Ages, that he was married and he did have children, and there are even books on it, which I found very interesting, because it helped you understand that maybe there's more to life than meets the eye, and these were different realms that we weren't privy to from the Earth's point of view, because they were too lower in nature. But as the higher in vibration you go, you get more doors are open to you because you're vibrating on that level, so you've got more information on that level. So you are fed more of these truths about Jesus and about how he ascended off the cross, and that he, in his spirit man, in his spirit, he would then go astral travelling to get in more knowledge about how to attain a higher level to get to God. And so when I'd heard about Jesus having been married, I was interested to know more about that. Well, one channeler said he had 3 children, because she asked him how many children he had, and he was telling him about his children. And then another channeler a few months down the line said he had 4. And then a bit later on I had another one that said he had 5 children. Now this was starting to, something was telling me at the back of my mind, hold on a second, how come he's got 3 children 1 minute, 4, then 5? And that's when slowly the realisation that something wasn't right here. Jesus should know how many children he had. These people were saying about how he was vibrating on a higher level. They were mixing Jesus up with the New Age, like he was a pioneer of the New Age, an ascended master, and that's what New Agers see Jesus as an ascended master. And the day that I actually asked God to show me the truth, because too many Jesuses having too many different children, I said, you know, this doesn't sound right, God, show me the truth. Well, the truth came as quite a revelation. I mentioned it in one of my other videos when I was preparing for an angel group, that there was a lady talking about angels, because I wanted to find out about Archangel Michael, and she said that Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane and that he could have asked 172 or 72,000 angels to come and rescue him at that particular moment, because he was about to go onto the cross, he was about to get crucified. But she said he didn't, because that was not his mission. Well, that's when my ears pricked up, because I thought, well, what mission was Jesus on here? The Garden of Gethsemane was the crucifixion, so I thought this is really important to listen to, because this is more detail about before he went on the cross. So I found out then, as this lady was speaking, that he was on a mission to get onto the cross to pay for all our sins, to take everybody's sin onto him, and then he was going to be crucified and get God to forgive us our sins so that we could be washed clean. He was going to be our scapegoat, or he was going to pay the price, the penalty that we would have had had we not had Jesus. We would have been judged in our sin. And Jesus, because he died for our sin, and if anybody believes in him that he did do that, and he resurrected from the cross, because they put him into a tomb, and then when he came out of the tomb, he was alive in physical form. Now, a lot of people think he was alive in spiritual form, but he wasn't. He was alive in his body. And that's the bit that I don't think many spiritual people know, that Jesus actually resurrected, and he was a real live body and not the spirit of Jesus. And when he rose again, he was his true self. Only God can do that. We can't do that. And Jesus was to prove that he was God, the true God, and that he'd resurrected from a death back into life again, and that his body carried on living up until he ascended into the clouds. And there was 500 witnesses. It says so in the Bible, that people saw him ascend, and that's where the ascension process comes. The New Agers have stolen the ascension process, where Jesus literally ascended in physical form back into heaven through the clouds, and there were witnesses. So you can read all of this in the Bible. I think a good source would be the New Testament, the Gospels. I think Book of John might mention it, I'm not sure, but that will come up later, so you can read about it yourself to get your own information. So then I find out that Jesus went on the cross on purpose. He didn't go on the cross to ascend, and that these channelers were talking to I don't know who, because Jesus didn't have children. There's no mention of anything to do with children or getting married in the Bible. So we're talking about two different Jesuses here. And the one that I now had aspired to was the real Jesus, was the one out of the Bible. Because I thought, out of all the other Jesuses I've been listening to, Jesus out of the Bible was the only one I could trust, because he actually went on the cross for humanity, and he was tortured before he went on the cross, and he had nails in his hands, and he was nailed to the cross, and he did that for us. And I think if somebody did that for me, then that's somebody I can trust, because he didn't just do it for the people standing in front of him, he did it for me, and he's done it for you. And that is why you can trust the Jesus of the Bible, because he died for you. The other Jesuses are still out there, and they're talking about how many children they've had, about all these different lies. I feel that they are, because I was listening to one channeler today just before I'm videoing, so I sort of revisited some of the channelers that I listened to, and the amount of lies that he was saying about Jesus were unbelievable. But I was caught up in that because I was so brainwashed through all the meditations I was experiencing, that I then found out that my spirit guides that I've been channeling weren't spirit guides, and they weren't after the goodness of my well-being or how to help me ascend. They were helping me to pull me down with them, which is, these are ungodly spirits. These aren't allowed in heaven, and they never will go to heaven, and they want as many people to come down with them as possible. And so what I found out when I tested my spirits were that these were demonic spirits, and these demonic spirits are very clever at masking themselves to be anything that you would like them to be. I was very interested in Jesus, and they could quite easily manipulate themselves to appear to me like Jesus through different channelers. And so many people are after Jesus that these people, these demons, do not want us to know about Jesus and the truth, because these demons are being condemned to the lake of fire. The day of judgment, they're going into the lake of fire, and they want us to go down with them. And that's the danger of this. And if you read in the book of Deuteronomy in the Bible, it actually says, and God warns us, do not talk to the dead. And I did read somewhere it says, do not go into different dimensions, because those doors need to be closed. We're not meant to be tampering with different dimensions. God knows what's behind these dimensions, and these different beings from different dimensions want to turn us away from God, away from Jesus, who died for us on the cross. So what Jesus actually done, he's wiped away all the things that we've done wrong. He put them onto himself 2,000 years ago. And this is everybody from the beginning of time to the end of time. So even people that aren't even born, he's actually wiped away their sins. So if you think you want to meditate to release your dross, or you're using things to make yourself ascend higher, Jesus has already done it. We don't have to do a thing. We just need to believe in him, that he's already done it for us, and be grateful and thankful, and also get to know him, because he is the Spirit. With his Holy Spirit, he's alive and he is genuine, and he will come into your life, but you have to invite him in. He won't force himself on you like these spirit guides did with me. Remember I said they actually took over me, and I was performing in front of my lodger, so they were starting to infiltrate my will, because God's given us all a free will, and spirits know this, and they want to dominate your free will so that you can come away from God. God won't interfere with your free will, but the demons will, and they will dress themselves up as spirit guides with your best intentions at heart, but they haven't. They're liars from the pit of hell, and they want you down. And I know this now because when I said yes to Jesus, the real Jesus, it's like something came off me, and all the spaces in my heart that you're trying to fill with different things. It could be alcohol, it could be relationships, it could be spirit guides, it could be spirit lessons, aromatherapy, anything that wants to fill those spaces in. Jesus does that. As soon as I said yes to Jesus, everything stopped. It's like the train to try different spiritual experiences had come to the halt, and Jesus had filled all the gaps, the void, and I was at peace. And I think that's what people, when they're meditating, are looking for peace. And Jesus gives you that peace instantly. It's the minute you say yes to Jesus, I believe that you died for me, and you are the one and only, one true God, and what you did on the cross was real. He will come into your life. You have to ask him, because he's not going to interfere with your free will. But when you ask him, you do know the difference. And it's such a tangible difference that when I look back now on this channeling video just before I came out, it was awful. The vibrations were not light, they were very dark, because I am in the light now, the true light with Jesus, because he says I am the life, the way, the truth and the life. But he is the light also, because the contrast between the New Age spirit guides and being with Jesus is like darkness and light. And so I'm just here now to say my other end of the journey. This is a 27-year-old journey from what I thought was the light into the true light. And then when I look back at the light that I was living in, it was really dark. And the atmosphere was awful. But you get so brainwashed, you'll believe anything. That's their intention. They're trying to get you away from God, the real God, the true God, who is a living God. He's not energy. He actually, we're made in his image, and that is as we are physically, and so is God. And that was a surprise to me, but you have to go on your own journey. But my warning is channeling is demonic, and it's dangerous, because since then I've had exorcisms, and the exorcist that I was with said these infiltrate your mind and your brain and the cells in your body. And I know that because when I came out of the New Age, I couldn't remember anything. I couldn't remember what I'd had for breakfast, what I did, what I'd said, where I was going. And in the end, I had to go to the doctors thinking I'll be going down the Alzheimer's or dementia route, but I passed all the tests. But I do know that this is like demonic possession of my brain, of my mind, of the things I'd allowed them to do to me. It's never too late, so don't be scared if you're in that position, because I've come out. Jesus does heal you. He gives you everything that you need, that you're looking for in the spiritual realms, in the New Age. Jesus is already doing it for you when you say yes to Jesus. So they're copying what Jesus already does for you when you say yes. And Jesus isn't a religion, he's not Catholic. He is the Son of God, and he is miraculous. He does do miracles. He's never stopped doing miracles. You just have to believe that he is the Son of God, and he will help you, because he knows you more than you know yourself, because he created you.
If you would like to know more about Lucyna's experiences with the New Age, and how Jesus Christ set her free, and how he can set you free, check out her website http://www.lubowen.com.